Gaijin Entertainment presents The Shooting Range. You're watching The Shooting Range, a weekly show for all tankers and airmen of War Thunder. In this episode, how to become president, PT-109 torpedo boat and its famous commander. Want to try using some SPG but don't know where to begin? We offer our best picks. Hotline. The developers answer questions that you left in the comments. But first, let's start with the British insect. How to fly the Havilland Mosquito. Enter the twin-engine heavy fighter from Great Britain at Tech Rank 4. A rather unwieldy aircraft at a glance, the Mosquito is in fact a mighty hunter capable of going toe-to-toe with its single-engine cousins. You see, the Mosquito has 8 guns on board, 4 Hispano Mark IIs and 4 Browning machine guns. The combined ammo reserve is enough to make a couple of solid head-on attacks, take a few bombers, and destroy some ground targets later. Despite its old wooden hull and considerable size, the Mosquito has excellent mobility and turns well at low speeds. It has a solid roll rate and tough flaps. It is also good at saving energy in combat. Now, imagine the surprise of your enemies when their FWs or Messerschmitts are being outperformed by a twin-engine fighter. That is something to remember. But even the Mosquito can meet its fly swatter, so here are a few tips on playing this mighty aircraft. Keep an eye on your altitude. No twin-engine aircraft can survive a battle with several opponents, so you should attack lone targets from above instead, finishing them well before any sort of help can arrive to save them. Your speed is also important, but not for maneuvering. If you can reach 310 miles an hour or 500 kilometers an hour, you'll quickly notice that your normally nimble aircraft can barely pull out of a dive. So, try to spin your enemy around following a boom and zoom attack is hardly a good idea. Already started your diving attacks? Keep at them as long as you have the energy. Got a fighter on your 6? No need to panic. Try and make the enemy overshoot you using scissors move or do a barrel roll. Then turn using your takeoff flaps and fire away. 6 kilograms of hot lead per second should be enough for any target. Boom! The optimal climb angle is 10 to 13 degrees. This way you should have the altitude advantage when the enemy shows up most of the time. Your engines tend to overheat rather fast, so once your temperature goes orange, switch off your web to cool them down. You thought that was it? Nope. War Thunder has 2 different modifications of the Mosquito. The second one is a ground attacker modification and should be a real treat for all fans of combined battles. The machine guns are the same, but the Hispanos were replaced with a 57mm cannon, which AP shells can take out tank engines of pretty much every target at its rank. Of course, even such a mighty cannon is hardly more powerful than a couple of direct bomb hits, but if you like variety, this is the pick for you. We previously told you about one of the patrol boats from our naval battle starter packs. Today we'll talk about another one, a very famous representative of its class. In Fort T3, they put to sea 13 men and Kennedy aboard the PT-109 to fight the brazen enemy. Recognize the famous song by Jimmy Dean? John Fitzgerald Kennedy was famous long before he took a seat in the Oval Office. At the helm of the PT-109, he became a war hero, while his little naval craft forever etched its name in the history of the US Navy. The rather short but nonetheless famous journey of the PT-109 began in June 1942 in Bayonne, New Jersey. It became the 7th constructed boat of the PT-103 class, which the US wharves were producing en masse from 1942 until the very end of the war. The Navy required fast, tough, and heavily armed patrol torpedo boats. The PT-103 class was the craft that fit the bill just right. Capable of going as fast as 41 knots, that's almost 75 kilometers an hour, the craft carried a whole arsenal of weapons, 4 torpedo tubes, 2 twin machine guns, and a 20mm autocannon. All that in addition to depth charges, a smoke discharger, and other such gadgets. Now, add the considerable toughness of a 50-ton boat, and you get a perfect raider which can effectively engage other small craft and battle fleets just as well. In 42 and 43, these PTs sunk the lion's share of the Japanese transport fleet. Unfortunately, the PT-103 simply could not venture too far out to the sea, nor for too long. So they were literally shipped by larger vessels to the designated AOs. Once final shots of the war fell silent, the old and banged up PTs could not be returned home. It would simply cost too much. They had to burn. Finally, when in 1963 the filmmakers decided to make a movie about the PT-109, they could not find a single PT of its class in one piece. PT-109 came to the Pacific in August of 1942, carried aboard the Liberty ship SS Joseph Stanton. The boat was based at Tulagi Island. It fought in the battle for Guadalcanal, conducted various combat tasks, from convoy duty to deploying Marines ashore, up until December 2, 1943, when the Japanese left the island. April 23, 1943, the PT-109 has a new commander assigned, fresh off the boot camp. It was none other than Lieutenant John Kennedy, who was later simply called Jack by his crew. Soon, several PTs, including Jack's 109, were transferred to Rendova Island, from where they began hunting the ships of the so-called Tokyo Express. One such ship soon rammed the PT-109. Its final voyage was at night of August 2, 1943. Just a day before, the crew finished upgrading the vessel. The sailors procured a 37mm anti-tank gun and installed it on board their boat after they cut off its road wheels. Sadly, they could never put it to use. The PT-109 was on patrol, running silent. Nobody saw the enemy coming. The Japanese destroyer Amagiri came out of nowhere and rammed the PT-109 at full speed. Jack was violently thrown against the deck, while his boat was cut clean in half. Two of the sailors died instantly, but the Japanese decided not to bother with the survivors since the waters around Solomon Islands were infested with sharks. Jack gathered the remaining sailors in the still floating bow end of the boat, and they began their long swim ashore. In the end, Kennedy managed to save 11 of his crew and lead them to a nearby island, from where they were later picked up by the Navy, following a message scribbled on a coconut shell passed via the locals. Following this ordeal, the career of the young officer went up, and fast. The story of the miraculous deliverance of the PT's crew made him a hero to many. What happened to John Kennedy later, you probably know already. As to the PT-109, its wreckage was discovered in 2002, but still rests on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Don't know how to start playing SPGs? We might have the solution just for you. As you might have heard, sometimes a single vehicle is simply not enough to win an arcade battle in War Thunder. Most players bring a whole roster of tanks that suit their playstyle. Now, we would like to introduce you to one such roster, made up exclusively from Soviet SPGs. This is a good place to start for those of you who want to get introduced to this type of combat vehicle. Our roster looks like this: Su-85, 85M, and Su-152. If you have some spare Golden Eagles, consider investing in Su-100Y simply for its phenomenal naval cannon. Now, what you have is a one-shot, one-kill squad. Your primary vehicle should be the Su-152, which can send any Tiger or IS tank back to the hangar with a single shot. Not to mention medium and light tanks, that is. The premium Su-100Y is legendarily tough to take out, while its 130mm cannon is an object of fear for many players of Shermans and Comets. Well, as to the Su-85s, these could be called highly mobile sledgehammers. They don't have the sheer tremendous firepower of the previously mentioned vehicles, but this is a solid pick for your vehicles of last resort. If you just don't like the Su-85, you can easily replace it with a KV-2. The gameplay won't differ much from the Su-152. With this roster selected, you can play defensively or aggressively, sending high-caliber shells via your green crosshairs from over hills and punch through enemy defenses on narrow streets of towns and cities. Just remember this: even the mighty Su-100Y should not ignore the foe and play John Rambo, especially since you can reach some really high scores simply by supporting your allies along the main routes of attack, while making hefty amounts of silver and experience. Finally, it's time for the traditional last part of our show, Hotline, developers answering questions from the comments. Strictly speaking, it's not the most serious-minded section of the show. If you want answers to be given with solemn faces, feel free to appeal to the official forums. Here we have a more lighthearted discussion of the big questions of War Thunder. We hope you like it. There were many questions lately concerning our test drive and its functionality. We are updating the test drive from time to time, and it might be reworked someday, but now, as we're working on naval warfare and some other exciting things, it's not on our priority list. But do not despair, there are a lot of well-built custom test drive missions that can be found at live.warthunder.com. Please check them out. Then there are guys like Peter Gorenser and Christian Laszlo, who say that their questions are never noticed by the devs. Hey Peter and Christian, we actually do read all the comments, but we can't answer them all. The guys who provide answers for the show are actual developers who face their own deadline, and sometimes would prefer to confine themselves to a remote bunker to work on a new vehicle rather than partake in human interaction. We also don't want to give big promises and instill false hopes. First, we make sure that something is bound to happen, then we tell you about it. We just don't want to let you down, guys. Finally, an important observation from a player called Andrew Ty W. Damn it, now not only I will be reminded every day by my friends of getting killed by a BT and a crumble, but now when I get the mouse, I can't get cocky either. And now, the whole world knows. That's it for today, but feel free to write your questions in the comments below. We do read them all, and you might see some of them answered in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the shooting range.